April 29th, 1945. Early afternoon. Dachau, just outside Munich. The camp is no longer being entered. It is being held. American soldiers stand at fixed points now, near the gates, along the fence lines, outside the barracks. Rifles are still lowered, but grips are firmer. Helmets are back on. The posture has changed. Liberation has already happened. What comes next is something else. The initial shock of discovery has not faded. If anything, it has settled deeper. The soldiers have seen enough to understand that Dachau was not an accident of war. It was a system. And systems have operators. That realization hangs in the air as the hours pass. Orders begin to circulate. Quietly, carefully, the camp is to be secured. Survivors are to be stabilized. Guards, if found, are to be detained and separated. It sounds straightforward. It is not. The men assigned to perimeter duty notice movement beyond the campgrounds. Small groups at first, then more. Some are wearing familiar uniforms. Others attempt to blend in. SS insignia is spotted, then confirmed. The guards are coming into view. They are disarmed quickly. No resistance. No dramatic confrontations. Most seem resigned. Some appear confused. A few look afraid. They are marched into temporary holding areas under American watch. And suddenly, the camp is no longer just a place of victims. It is a place where perpetrators are present. The atmosphere tightens. Soldiers who had spent the morning moving cautiously now find themselves standing between two groups whose shared history needs no explanation. The survivors recognize the guards immediately. There is no uncertainty, no hesitation. A murmur spreads through the prisoners. Not loud, not chaotic, but charged. You can almost feel the tension shifting from shock to anger. American officers move quickly. Positions are adjusted. Prisoners are held back. Clear lines are drawn. The guards are ordered to sit, hands visible, heads forward. Discipline is asserted. But discipline here is fragile. These soldiers have enforced order under fire. They have followed commands during bombardment, retreat, and advance. This is different. There is no enemy fire to focus attention, no immediate danger to channel adrenaline. Only proximity. Only awareness. A lieutenant scans the faces of his men. He sees the strain immediately. These are not untested soldiers. They are veterans. And that is what worries him. Veterans understand consequences. Veterans understand intent. The orders are repeated, calmly, formally. Guards are prisoners of war. They are to be protected until transferred. No unauthorized action will be tolerated. The words are correct. The moment is not. One soldier looks toward the barracks, then back at the guards. Another shifts his weight, jaw clenched. No one speaks. No one needs to. The war has placed them in a position no training manual anticipated, enforcing restraint in the presence of undeniable evidence. Medics continue their work nearby. Survivors are being moved carefully. Water is distributed in measured amounts. Everything is being done by the book. That makes the contrast sharper. Because the guards are also being treated by the book. An officer signs paperwork at a makeshift table. Names are recorded, ranks noted, procedures followed. The formality feels surreal. And yet, it is intentional. Because everyone present understands that what happens in these hours will not stay here. It will be examined, questioned, remembered. This is not just about justice. It is about legitimacy. The soldiers feel it. The officers know it. The camp itself seems to hold its breath. As the afternoon wears on, the balance holds, but only just. The distance between control and collapse feels uncomfortably small. And with every new guard detained, the question becomes harder to ignore. How long can discipline survive in a place where restraint feels like the heaviest burden of all? The anger does not arrive all at once. It builds slowly, accumulating in silence, in glances exchanged, in thoughts left unspoken. The soldiers have done what they were trained to do: secure the area, establish order, follow procedure. But training does not erase emotion. It only contains it. And containment has limits. By mid-afternoon, the camp feels crowded in a new way. Not with movement, but with tension. The survivors remain nearby, watching everything. They do not interfere. They do not shout. Many simply stand and observe, as if needing to witness what happens next. The guards, now seated and under watch, avoid eye contact. Some stare at the ground. Others look straight ahead, faces rigid, unreadable. A few glance toward the prisoners and then quickly look away. Whatever authority they once carried has evaporated. They are aware of it. Everyone is. American soldiers rotate shifts, but the pressure does not lift. Each new group steps into the same charged space, inherits the same unresolved weight. Word spreads quietly through the ranks about what has been found elsewhere in the camp. Each detail sharpens the edge. A corporal mutters something under his breath. Another soldier exhales slowly, deliberately, as if reminding himself to stay present. These are small acts of control, invisible to anyone not standing close enough to notice. Officers watch constantly. They reposition men, not because the situation demands it tactically, but because it diffuses pressure. Distance becomes a tool. Separation becomes a form of control. The survivors sense the strain as well. Some step back voluntarily when guards are moved. Others remain still, hands clasped, eyes fixed. They understand restraint. They have lived under it for years. That knowledge complicates everything. A chaplain arrives and begins speaking quietly with a group of soldiers near the perimeter. He does not offer explanations, he listens. That too is a form of containment. The guards are eventually moved again, this time farther from the barracks, farther from the prisoners. The decision is practical, but it also acknowledges the reality of the moment. Proximity is the greatest risk. As they are escorted, a few guards stumble from exhaustion. An American soldier steadies one instinctively, then releases his arm almost immediately, aware of how it might look. Every gesture here feels amplified. The soldiers are conscious not only of their actions, but of how those actions might be remembered. Cameras are expected. Reports will be written. This place will not remain private. The war has taught them to act under observation. Dachau teaches them to act under judgment. Late in the afternoon, an officer receives updated instructions. The guards are to be transferred as soon as possible. Higher command has been notified. The chain of custody matters. That order brings relief, but also frustration. Because transfer means delay, and delay means the guards remain here, present, breathing the same air as the people they once controlled. The anger has nowhere to go. It cannot be directed at an advancing enemy. It cannot be resolved through action. It must be carried. You can almost feel the strain in the way soldiers stand now back straighter, movements more deliberate, expressions more tightly controlled. This is discipline at its most difficult. Not enforced from above, but maintained from within. As the sun lowers, shadows lengthen across the camp. The light changes, but the tension does not. It simply shifts shape, becoming quieter, heavier. The soldiers know the night will bring no answers, only endurance. And as the hours stretch on, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Holding the camp is no longer the challenge. Holding themselves is, as afternoon gives way to early evening, the camp settles into a strange routine. Guards remain under watch. Survivors are guided toward rest where possible. Medics continue their careful work. The outward appearance is one of control. Internally, the strain deepens. Officers begin rotating men more frequently, not because the perimeter is threatened, but because emotional fatigue, is becoming visible. A soldier who has stood watch too long in one place begins to fixate. Another grows distant, eyes locked forward, unresponsive to conversation. These are warning signs. Experienced commanders recognize them immediately. An order is passed quietly. No one remains on guard duty near the detainees for extended periods. No one is left alone with them. Accountability is shared. Presence is collective. This is not written doctrine. It is situational leadership. A captain walks the line, stopping briefly beside each group of soldiers. He does not lecture. He does not threaten. He reminds them, calmly, of their responsibility, not to the guards, but to the uniform they wear. That reminder carries weight. Because for many of these men, the uniform is the last stable reference point they have left. It represents rules, structure, identity, things Dachau has systematically stripped away from others. To abandon that structure here would mean surrendering something essential. The soldiers understand this, even as their instincts pull them in the opposite direction. From time to time, a survivor approaches an American soldier and speaks softly, pointing toward the detainees. The meaning is unmistakable. The soldiers listen, nod, and gently guide the survivor away. There is no anger in these exchanges, only restraint. And restraint, in this place, feels like an act of defiance against everything the camp represents. The guards remain silent. Some appear withdrawn. Others watch the Americans carefully, as if trying to gauge how much protection the rules will actually provide. They have learned to read power structures. This one is new. As dusk approaches, floodlights are prepared around the perimeter. Night operations are planned. The camp must be held through darkness. When visibility drops and tension tends to rise, officers brief their men again. No unnecessary contact. No confrontations. No deviations from orders. The words are simple. The execution is not. One soldier later recalls that this was the first time in the war he felt his discipline tested without the presence of danger. There was no incoming fire, no immediate threat to life. Just the weight of what had been discovered, and the knowledge that how they responded would define them as much as any battle. As the sun sets behind the barracks, the camp takes on a different shape. Shadows deepen. Familiar landmarks become indistinct. Sounds carry farther. Every movement feels amplified. The soldiers tighten their grip on procedure. Checklists are followed. Reports are filed. Guard rotations continue. Order is maintained not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Yet beneath that order lies a growing awareness. Discipline here is not just a military requirement. It is a moral one. And moral discipline, once tested, rarely goes unexamined. As night falls fully over Dachau, the question remains unresolved, whether restraint can continue to hold through the longest hours, when exhaustion and memory collide. Night does not soften Dachau. It sharpens it. Floodlights switch on around the perimeter, casting hard cones of light across the ground. Shadows stretch between the barracks. The camp feels larger after dark, emptier in some places, unbearably close in others. The guards are still there. Separated, watched, silent. For many of the American soldiers, this is the most difficult part. Darkness removes distraction. There is less movement, less noise, fewer tasks to occupy the mind. What remains are thoughts uncontrolled, persistent. Some men pace their assigned areas slowly, counting steps without realizing it. Others stand perfectly still, eyes forward, as if motion itself might invite loss of control. A sergeant notices one of his men staring too long at the detainees. He steps in quietly, placing a hand on the soldier's shoulder, not to restrain him, but to redirect him. A few words are exchanged, low, private. The soldier nods and is reassigned. Small interventions matter now, because the margin for error is thin. At one point, raised voices echo briefly from the far side of the holding area. They do not escalate, but they draw immediate attention. Officers converge quickly. Questions are asked, accounts compared. The situation is diffused before it fully forms. But the fact that it nearly did is enough. Everyone understands how close the line has come. The camp has become a place where justice, vengeance, and duty stand within arm's reach of one another. The soldiers are not debating these concepts. They are living inside them. An officer later describes the sensation as standing on unstable ground, where every step must be deliberate, because instinct is no longer reliable. The prisoners sense it too. They keep their distance. They lower their voices. Some sit quietly near the barracks, watching the soldiers more than the guards. They understand who now holds power, but they also understand how fragile restraint can be. That awareness adds another layer of pressure. The soldiers are no longer just enforcing order for themselves. They are modeling it. If they lose control, even briefly, the consequences will ripple outward to survivors, to command, to history. That knowledge keeps the line intact. Barely. As the night stretches on, exhaustion deepens. Boots are shuffled. Helmets are adjusted. Men drink from canteens they no longer remember filling. Fatigue makes everything harder, especially judgment. And yet, discipline holds. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but deliberately. Because by now, The soldiers understand something essential. This place does not just record what was done here before they arrived. It will also record what is done now. As dawn approaches, the tension begins to ease not because it has resolved, but because it has been endured. The night has passed without collapse. Control, however strained, has survived. But the experience has left a mark. The men know that whatever follows reports, transfers, investigations, will carry the weight of these hours. The line did not break, but it was tested, and the memory of how close it came will remain long after the camp is quiet again. Dawn comes slowly to Dachau. The light is thin at first, filtering over the barracks and fences without warmth. It does not bring relief, it brings clarity, the kind that exposes fatigue rather than erasing it. American soldiers straighten as the sky brightens. Night watches end. New rotations take their place. Faces look older than they did the day before, not from age, but from compression, as if too much had been forced into too little time. The guards are still under control. That fact matters. It means the night held. Orders begin arriving from higher command. Clearer now, more formal. Instructions about transfer, documentation, and continued separation are relayed and acknowledged. The system is reasserting itself. But the men on the ground know the system did not carry them through the night. They did. Survivors begin moving again, cautiously. Some step into open spaces they avoided the day before. Others remain near the barracks, watching the soldiers with quiet attention. They have learned to read behavior. They sense that something has shifted. The Americans are no longer reacting. They are managing. Medics resume rounds. Supplies are redistributed with greater structure. Interpreters work steadily, recording names and basic information. Each small administrative act feels strangely significant. It is a return to process in a place designed to erase it. An officer reviews a report and pauses before signing it. He rereads a line, then adjusts the wording. Precision matters. Every sentence must be able to stand later scrutiny. This is not about blame. It is about record. Photographers move carefully through the camp, documenting conditions exactly as they are. No staging, no commentary. The soldiers give them space. They understand that these images will outlast all of them. The guards are prepared for transfer. They are escorted in small groups, under close supervision. No interaction is allowed. No words are exchanged. The process is deliberately uneventful. That, too, is intentional. The absence of drama is the point. As each group is moved out, the tension inside the camp loosens slightly, not because justice has been served, but because immediacy has been reduced. Distance, once again, becomes a tool. A few soldiers watch the transfers silently. Others turn away. No one celebrates. No one comments. The restraint of the previous day has carried forward. By late morning, the camp feels different again, not lighter, but steadier. The edge has dulled. The urgency has shifted from emotional containment to sustained responsibility. The soldiers know they will be replaced soon. Other units will take over. Administrators, investigators, and relief organizations will arrive. Dachau will enter a new phase of its existence. But the hours immediately after liberation belong to these men. They were the ones who stood between shock and chaos, between anger and action, between instinct and discipline. They did not solve anything here, but they prevented something from happening. And that absence, what did not occur, will never appear in photographs or official summaries. It exists only in memory. As the day continues, the men move with purpose again, not because the weight has lifted, but because it has settled. And with that settlement comes a final quiet understanding. What mattered most at Dachau was not only what was discovered. It was what was restrained. By midday, Dachau no longer feels suspended between outcomes. It has entered a process. The urgency that defined the first hours after liberation has given way to structure. Command presence increases. Paperwork accumulates. Responsibilities are divided more clearly. The camp is transitioning from a military shock site to a documented historical site. That transition is necessary, but it does not erase what came before it. The soldiers who were present during those first hours understand that their role was temporary but decisive. They were not there to judge history. They were there to prevent it from repeating itself in another form. What they faced was not simply the aftermath of atrocity, but the challenge of restraint in the presence of undeniable evidence. The war had trained them to act decisively against threats. Dachau required them to act deliberately in the absence of one. That distinction matters. Because discipline, in those hours, was not about obedience to command alone. It was about preserving legitimacy, about ensuring that what followed would stand on solid ground, not compromised by impulse, however understandable that impulse might have been. The soldiers knew this, even if they could not articulate it at the time. Later, some would speak about Dachau only in fragments. Others would avoid the subject altogether. Few would describe the tension of those hours in detail, not because nothing happened, but because what mattered was what did not. The absence of collapse. The absence of chaos. The absence of irreversible decisions made in anger. History often records events by what is visible. What can be photographed? What leaves physical evidence behind? The hours after Dachau's liberation left something else. They left an example. An example of how discipline can function not as suppression, but as responsibility. How authority, when exercised carefully, can prevent further harm. How restraint, even under the most extreme emotional strain, can protect truth rather than obscure it. For the soldiers involved, this understanding came at a cost. It demanded control at a moment when control felt almost unnatural. It required them to carry anger without releasing it, to witness without responding, to hold the line when instinct urged otherwise. The burden does not appear in official after-action reports. But it mattered, because the credibility of what followed, the investigations, the trials, the historical record itself rested in part on those hours, on the fact that Dachau was secured, not avenged. As the men prepared to move on, the camp remained behind them. Others would take over. Other responsibilities would follow. The war would end soon. But Dachau would remain a reference point, not just for what it revealed about the past, but for what it demanded in the present. The hours after Dachau was liberated tested more than military discipline. They tested whether justice could begin without losing control. And in that quiet, restrained outcome, history found something rare. Not resolution, but integrity.